Hello, and welcome to the Business Behind Small Business, the show that reminds you that just because you own a business doesn't mean you're a business owner. In each episode, we will discuss a common issue small businesses face and offer tips and advice from the perspectives of two business owners, one that built to sell and one that built to inherit. We are your hosts, Sevana Stone and Chloe Lee. There's a lot of business behind small business, so let's get to it. Thank you for joining me, Chloe.
Thanks for having me.
So, this is going to be great. I am really excited about our podcast. We have a lot to talk about and we have a lot to offer everyone, but I think it's important for us to get into the background, our origin story, as to what inspired us to start this podcast. For me, it was an idea that I had been tossing around for a while, and I knew that I wanted to do one, but I didn't know that if I wanted to do one alone. And I have a lot to bring to the table, but I didn't want to sit at that table by myself. So
thank you for inviting me over then.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can speak for myself as to what inspired me, but what can you say that inspired you?
Well, I think it's just getting an opportunity to let others know what it's like. And like you say, nobody likes to be sitting at the table alone. I think that for myself, when I was starting up my business, I felt alone. Alone, such a lonely island. And then it got even worse feeling alone when you hire employees. Yes. And, I remember during that time, like, just, wanting to just not feel alone anymore, feeling like you're the only one pushing against the current, hitting the grind. And so, that's what I was hoping that, our podcast can do for other small business owners out there, to let them know that they're not alone and what they're going through is extremely normal. And, we're right there with them.
Oh, yeah, I agree. And I think that sometimes when you are trying to figure out what your path is going to look like, you start to invest in books and workshops and all kinds of stuff and podcasts, of course. But for me, I always found that they gave me a view from so high up. Mm-hmm. And I didn't like that. I wanted somebody to talk to that was going through exactly what I was going through. And to speak to that, what makes me, why would anyone want to listen to us? So I think it's important for people to understand what we're really bringing to the table, that we're not just, two friends, two women, two professionals who enjoy hearing each other's voices. We actually do have, I think, some pretty meaty stuff to bring to the table. For me, I started my business 10 years ago. I started it by myself and I worked by myself. And at that time, my company offered bookkeeping, admin, and at that time, social media and content management. And I did that because I was really good at all three, but had never done all three together in one company. I knew that I wanted to I had two other businesses in the past that, this, that, or the other had happened to. And I knew that I wanted it to be solid and for it to be different than what I had done before. My education was more in the school of hard knocks. It wasn't that I had gone to a business school or had learned any of this from getting a master's degree in business. No, my degree was in working for family members who, everyone in my family owns a business, and all of them, I think, together could make their own networking group. And that's where I learned a lot of what I learned about business. And I wanted to apply what I knew into something that I could grow, into something that could be inherited. And that's what I decided. I wanted to create a business that was inheritable. Of course, I did this at the age of 35. At that time, I had two children who were youngish, and that's hard as a woman, I think, sometimes to try and find your value in as being a business owner. And then I got pregnant with my third child because, why not?
And that's when I met you too. You were pregnant.
Yes,
and just
exactly.
starting. Yes.
Exactly. So, and so in that period of time, I started growing and growing and growing. And I went from being just myself to where I am now with 15 employees. I, during that time, had built a networking organization. I had been a president of a few networking chapters. I had a women's series. I have workshops that I do for women in either women who are recently coming out of incarceration or women who are in homes from having been coming from abusive backgrounds. And so, a lot of what I have learned over this period of time, I think it's good for me to now expand it into the podcastosphere. What about what about for you? What would you say brings what you're bringing to the table, or rather validates what you're bringing to the table?
Yeah, well, I like that word, podcastosphere. Well, I think just kind of go a little bit into my background. I grew up in kind of a small business family, right? So we were a very typical, I guess in a sense, a Chinese American family, rather specifically a Taiwanese American family, where our family business was it, right? So, our parents worked there, and then of course all the kids worked there for free.
That's important.
And that's what we were on the weekends. Yeah, there was no allowance. That doesn't go over well. So, so my brother and I actually kind of grew up in that world. My parents had a couple small businesses when we were growing up. Of course, we all pitched in when we were on the weekends or right after school. And so, funny enough, I went to college. I went and graduated with a business degree, and then went into headlong just a regular career, just a career path. Not realizing why I didn't really think about going to small business, but just that's what everybody else was doing. So that's what else do you do at 20, 21 years old, right? Right. And then around 27, after a few years in just holding a couple different jobs in kind of just the corporate America world, I had this moment where I just had to decide whether or not I guess that's at that moment where I just, again, it was kind of sitting in a dark office late at night, because when you're on a career path that I was, you tend to work about 12 hours a day. So I was in the office, it was late, and I was like filing papers, and I was like, there's got to be a little bit more to my life than this. Right?
Just a touch, just a
little touch. And not to knock anything on that employer that I was working for. It was actually a great company. I had a great position. I actually really liked the company, but it was more of just a self-realization moment as the fact that, hey, you know what? I'm 27 years old. I'm not married. I don't have any kids. If I don't take a leap and try to figure out what the potential is in my life, when am I going to do this?
Right.
And so that's exactly what happened. Is I as easy as it sound was, and probably foolish now that I look back on it, I kind of promptly quit my job, and then kind of hung my shingles out. But part of that is probably also my background, is growing up in a small business like family. Starting something on your own just didn't, I didn't know what I didn't know, right? So I didn't even know to be
right. Oh no, I completely understand that.
So sometimes that is a blessing. But it does come around. So let me tell you, the next 8 years was quite an education. After starting my business, I kind of did it a couple years for myself. And then about year 3, I started hiring employees. At some point, I got up to about 10 employees. And then last year, sold the business. And so, somewhere along the way, I kind of realized what I wanted to do, which is essentially to buy and sell multiple businesses and be a serial entrepreneur. So that's, kind of the path I'm on today. But I do feel like that is a different perspective to business. It's very, most everybody who start a business knows how hard it is. So certainly they want to stay in one for as long as possible. And I have this dream and idea that, I want to build and sell many times over. And so I think that, can, bring a different perspective to our listeners here. Just having a different vision than what I wouldn't want to say the norm, but I guess the more common idea about business, right?
Well, and there are only two different types. Well, I guess there's three different types of businesses: the kind you inherit, the kind you sell, and the kind you shut down.
Yes, there you go. Yes.
Yeah, but I completely agree, and I think it's our different perspectives that are going to hopefully be bringing a lot to the table. And I'm with you there on. I grew up in an Armenian family, and in my family, going for us. Taking a path that was going to like a white collar path was absolutely frowned upon. Like, what are you talking about? That's not why we came here. Pick up your bootstraps and start a business. What are you talking about? So it was a little, I mean, I was 11 working in a jewelry store in Detroit because, why not? But I learned so much from it, and I worked and I've been working, from such a young age, but, it's not, the thing about it is that we're not unicorns, right? Like there are a lot of people who are like us, but the problem is that thankfully the two of us met. Because I can honestly say that there was a lot I didn't know that I didn't know. And you and I think over the years, learned a lot about business just from our individual experiences. But, you and I did not grow up together, so eventually we met.
Well, we were definitely doing that thing that they call it where you're like flying a plane while you're building it.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
and that's how it feels exactly from day one. No matter how much experience you have, even through osmosis or through your experience, like there's nothing like being the founder of your own business and trying to build something.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah. You're always trying to figure it out.
Absolutely. And I remember when we met. You and I met probably right around the time that I started my company, because I think I was pregnant with my current 9-year-old when I met you.
And exactly. It was 9 years ago. Exactly.
Yeah. So I think we bonded over a cup of coffee, and we had met at a networking event, one of those exhaustive networking events. But I think we recognized something within each other. And what I found so unique about you was that you already knew that you wanted to build a business to sell. And I thought that was fascinating. How could you know that is what I was thinking to myself. But in the meantime, I already knew that I wanted my company to be an inherited business.
Right. Legacy business.
Oh, absolutely. And to be frank, I don't necessarily mean, when I say a legacy company, I don't mean that one of my kids is going to take it over, because no, you're not just going to take my company. No, I mean, like, I want it to be something that I can bequeath to someone I feel is going to take it to the next level and continue to be involved in some small way.
Yeah.
But you do need to build it differently, right? Like I have to build it differently than the way you did in order to sell yours.
There's some crossover, but there are slight differences depending on what your end goal is for your business.
Absolutely. And those advantages and disadvantages, the points and counterpoints, are all things that we're going to be bringing to the table. And throughout the time that we will be creating these episodes, that's what we will continue to have in mind is, what is the point of view of someone who built to sell, and what is the point of view of someone who built to inherit?
And even better, now is like the perfect time for us to start this podcast, because we're still pretty close into the action. You're still in the throes of your business. I had just freshly sold my business, but the stories are still alive in our heads. The lessons are still real. We're still, kind of quote unquote in the fight. We're still in the grind every day, and we're still, just living this life. So we feel like, talking about it now while it's fresh, while we're still close to the ground, to the action, this is the best time for all of our listeners out there who, most likely are in the same place.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to share some of the things that we're going to be talking about. And like I said, our episodes are going to be centered around the idea of, or rather from the point of view of someone who built to sell and someone who is building a legacy company. And so some of the things and the challenges, some of the experiences that we've had and some of the challenges that we've experienced. So some of those podcast episodes are going to be about identifying toxic clients and knowing when to fire them. So how to take steps to detach your business from your home. Ghosted. What to do when a client owes you money. Why do I need an admin? Why and when would your company need an HR? Why you shouldn't start a business, and what to expect when running a business, pulling in 10K, 100K, a million, and 10 million of top line revenue. And one of my favorites, sole proprietor, LLC, S Corp, C Corp, what you should be and when. I can say from my background and particularly yours, I found often that businesses did not know how to classify themselves. And so this is going to be really good for us to examine and to explore a bit. But how would you say that we came up with that list?
Yeah, so I think we kind of really went deep a lot into our experiences, actually real life experiences, drawing on, just things we've encountered, people we've encountered, situations we've encountered with both of us. Like, I think we came up with a list that's like prescriptive as well as inspirational. Sometimes you need a little bit both in your life, especially if you're running a business, depending on which day it is and what time we're asking you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think a lot of it draws from kind of our personal experiences in running a business, and just also, the people we've encountered and the stories we've heard ourselves from other business owners.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of how-tos and also whys and what's in there as well. Really a lot of topics between you and I.
Yeah, and it's not just going to be about topics. We're going to be using a few historical or famous examples of that bootstrap processes that will coincide with whatever our topic is in that episode, so that you can kind of anchor a real life person, or rather a more Googleable person.
You're coming up with all the good words
that
today.
is a clear example of what we're discussing. We'll bring in some guests. We'll discuss some little known facts, and we'll do more. Just stick with us, and we'll teach you things.
That's right. All right. So, at the end of the day, all we're here to do is really just provide like the best tools possible for kind of this uphill climb that we're all on right now. And of course, who better to do it than two women who's done it, doing it, and still plan to do it again.
Absolutely. I agree. And I'm really excited to get started with our first episode. So in saying that, I'm going to wrap this up and invite you to listen to us on our next episode, where we're going to be discussing, are you building a business to sell or inherit? In the meantime, thank you for your time, and we'll see you then.
See you later.